Okay, so let's continue with discussing other features of WCF. So far, we have seen how to create service, then how to host it on a particular type of host, whether to host it on a Windows form-based application, and then how to configure the host, how to define the various endpoints. What are the two approaches for defining endpoints on the host? Can anyone say? Major approaches of configuring the web service on the host. That means how to define the endpoints on the host side. Where do you write? Where do you define the endpoints? Which file? Correct. app.config file. So this is one of the approach through the configuration. Okay, by configuring the endpoints inside the config file app.config. Mainly for our web app, we have this app.config file, and inside that we define various endpoints. What is the other way to define endpoints? By coding. Okay, so we can write down the code and we can instantiate the different classes for creating endpoint. So actually those classes are instantiated for endpoints, max endpoints, and the bindings. So there are two approaches. Either you can do it by writing the config file, or secondly you can write down the code. And you can use either approach, or you can also use the mixed approach. So partial configuration can be done within the config file, and the other configuration, the rest of the configuration, you can write it down by the code. And usually this whatever you write inside the code will run after whatever is provided inside the config file. So basically, if you try to define the endpoints in config file as well as through the code, then the code part will override the whatever is present inside the config file. So don't try to do the same thing both in config as well as in the code. Okay, so that there is no confusion. You can also use mix approach, but the thing is, don't configure the same thing again in the code. Otherwise, whatever you write down the code will override whatever is present in the config file. So it might create a confusion. So avoid that part. Whatever you are defining these endpoints, make it mutually exclusive to both the config file and inside the code. So today we are going to learn how to write down an application or web service which will use the message contract in WCF. So can you recall why did we use the message contract? We know the use of data contract. So what is the purpose of using message contract? Yeah, it is correct. It is soap header. If we want to manage how to what will go inside the header of the soap message, what will go inside the body of the soap message, then we can explicitly tell it using the message contract. Otherwise, by default, everything will go inside the body part of the soap message. We do not have direct control unless we use the message contract. So by default, everything will go, all your data will be passed inside the body part of the soap message. So let us see one small application wherein we want to place an order for the book, and on the server side it will return this, it will create an order and finally reply that order was created successfully. So basically it's a dummy project, basically to understand the message contract. So here we are not interested in the application itself, neither we are creating database and storing the products and so forth. Here the main focus is to understand the message contract, right? So let us see this application. I have already uploaded the slides to the Google Classroom. So the for this lecture, it is divided into two part: data contract and message contract. But we have already gone through the data contract. So today we'll focus on the message contract. And let me share my screen to begin with this small application to understand the message contract, how to use the message contract in our application, so that you can apply it whenever you want to take control over the SOAP messages, right? So just a minute. Okay, hope that my screen is visible. I have just shared my screen. So here initially the we'll skip the, okay, I think we are on the message contract slide. So we'll create a WCF service library from the template. It will automatically generate the code for default interface and implementing contract. Yeah. And we'll delete the default interface and implementing class. So we'll create a new interface, and this is the interface wherein we define the service contract. Three operations: initiate order, place order, and finalize order. Now, the only important operation over here is the place order, where it takes book order as the argument and it returns the book order as the return value. The initiate order and finalize order are just for testing purpose only. So you can see this is three operations are there: initiate order, place order, and finalize order. Here book order is sent from the client app, and we are basically modifying this book order. Okay, and we are returning the updated book order back to the client. Okay, so for example, we will create a new order number and we'll update the order number inside this object, and that will be returned as the return value. Okay, and this is the message contract, because now we want to transmit this book order as a parameter to our place order operation. Now the difference is, now we are annotating this class with the message contract instead of the data contract. It is our custom class, and there are different properties like ISBN, quantity, first name, last name, address, and order number. In the constructor, we are initializing these values, and here you can see that the property ISBN has been annotated with message header. So here you can note down these two parts. It's a message contract, and this one is the message header. That means when the SOAP message is created, this ISBN number will be sent inside the header part. Okay, and the rest of the information like this quantity, first name, last name of the person who is placing an order, the address information, and order number is meant for to be generated on the server side. Okay, on the service side, it is to be generated on the service side. And once the order has been successfully placed, this order number would be updated on the service side, and this entire object, book order object, will be sent back from service to the client. So yeah. Here we have rest of the property: quantity, first name, last name, address, and order number. You can also use this get set only. Here you will notice that rest of this information are annotated with this message body member. Okay, they are annotated with message body member. So when we annotate the property with this, then the WCF will send this value as part of the SOAP body message. Okay, so see that all these fields, address, order number, first name, last name, the quantity, everything will be go inside the SOAP body message. And now we are implementing this interface. We call it as a service class as usual. Three operations: initiate order, simply returning a string that order has just initiated. And second is a place order, which is the important part, because now we are getting this book order from the client. We are creating an instance from this information itself, the book order itself, and we are updating this order number. Right now this is order number has been hard coded. Otherwise normally we will save it into the database, and from the database or either we will create a unique order number and then save it in the database, and this unique order number will be sent back to the client. So basically we are updating that book order object, and then we are returning that object as the return value. Finally, this finalize order, it's simply sending a message that order placed successfully. So these three will happen in this order: first initiate order, then place order, and then finalize order. So whenever an order is booked, these three operations should be performed. But here we need to learn that this book order will be transferred from our client to this service, and how this data would be transmitted. So basically, this ISBN number should be transferred inside the header, and rest of these fields, rest of these properties of the book order like quantity, name, address, order number will be transferred inside the SOAP body message. Okay, so let us see. We build the service and then we'll create an host application. So once again, we'll resort to Windows form based application for hosting our service. And I think yeah, there is a question. Let me see. Yeah, it is up to us. It is customizable. Okay, so this is just for it is up to you whether we want to transmit all the messages as part of the header. Normally, the important information like ID or something can be transferred inside the header, and the rest of the information we can pass inside the body. So it is totally up to the programmer. But again, it is used for special cases only. Normally, we need not use the message contract. Most of the time, it is suffice to use the data contract. No, no. See that you can send as much information inside the header and as much information inside the body. Okay, just a minute. Because host will require the DLL file of the service. And just a minute. Do we have questions? Okay. Yeah. So no questions. Yeah. And we need to configure the endpoints. So see that here we are defining. Okay, just let me know how many endpoints are there. As you can see, there are three endpoints. One is the how many business endpoints and how many metadata endpoints or max endpoints. Okay, two max endpoint, right, and one business endpoint. Correct. Now, this is for understanding purpose only. And secondly, you will notice that we have set this HTTP get enabled equal to false. That means we cannot download the metadata through the WSDL. Okay, we cannot directly download the metadata through the HTTP protocol. Okay, on the GET request. So we have set it false to disable this downloading of metadata via the HTTP GET request. But we can download the metadata via either TCP endpoint, TCP max endpoint, or pipe endpoint. if you are testing, this is just I am writing. You cannot for testing your application. You require only one endpoint for business endpoint, and for downloading the metadata, either create one max endpoint or you simply set enable this HTTP get enable property in the metadata section. Okay, so this service behavior section you can enable it. So if you want to quickly build and test your application, just define one business endpoint and enable this. You need not define the max endpoint, because through either way you can download the metadata through the max protocol or using the WSDL file directly via the HTTP protocol. And you can see, just for your reference, that you can use the different communication way for downloading max, like pipe protocol, TCP protocol. Also observe that in the pipe protocol we are not specifying the port number, because this pipe protocol can work only if the client is running on the same machine on which service is running. Okay, so both the client and service are on the same machine, then only it will work. Both are local. So usually this is not used. Normally either you will use the TCP or your HTTP protocol, which is more standardized than TCP, and TCP is not interoperable. So if your client and service both are written in .NET, then you should go for TCP. Otherwise, if your client can be anything else, then go for WS HTTP binding, because that is the interoperable binding. Fine. So this is we have configured all these endpoints in the app.config file. So nothing much is required in the code. In the design part, we simply display a message that when the service is ready and it will instantiate, host is ready and it will instantiate the service, will display a message that service is running. So in the form load event handler, we are creating a service instance, service host instance. We define, we pass as the constructor parameter our type of the service, that is service class. Use the open method, so it will instantiate the service and it will create some threads which are ready to accept the request from the client. We update the labels text to the service is running message, and finally when we close this form, automatically this service host will be closed via the close method invocation. So this is the simple our host application, and you will see that most of the configuration is done in the config file. Again, you don't require this many number of max endpoint. You require one max endpoint, and you can disable this, or you can you do not write any max endpoint and simply enable this HTTP get enable. So to download the WSDL or metadata. And we are using this business endpoint as the WS HTTP binding to use the HTTP protocol for communication between client and service. Yeah. Okay. And if we run the host, this firewall is preventing to run the host, and we are allowing through the admin. It might also require the admin password. Now we will build the client app. So once again, we'll use the form-based application to test the client. This is the design of the client app, wherein user will specify the ISBN number, quantity, first name, last name, address, and order number will be kept empty, because this order number we are expecting that it will be generated on the service side whenever the order gets placed successfully. If there is an error, the this order number will not be generated, and these labels will display the whether initiate order was successful, place order was successful, or finalize order was successful. So these two labels will reflect the initiate order and finalize order methods, basically the status of the order processing. In the client also, we need to generate the app.config file automatically. Otherwise, we need to write it manually. So to avoid writing this app.config file or defining endpoint on the client side manually, we can resort to this add service reference utility available in this Visual Studio. You can, on the client project, you can uh, select the add service reference and type in the URL of the max endpoint. Right now, this URL of the max endpoint has been typed TCP, but there are two max endpoint were defined, one over the TCP, another over the pipe protocol, named pipe protocol. And then you can just click on go, it will discover it, and we can add the this reference. It will automatically generate the app.config file. It will also determine the endpoints. It will read the endpoints from the metadata, identify the endpoints created or defined on the service side. Accordingly, it will create the app.config file. So this is the app.config file generated by this add service reference utility. We'll see that it has automatically found that the address on which the service is running, the binding it uses WS HTTP binding. So see that we are using TCP max endpoint to download the service metadata. Okay, but actual service is running on the HTTP protocol using the WS HTTP binding. It will also know about the contract, that is iService class, and the binding name is automatically generated. You can see there are two sections, client and binding section. In the binding section, we have this binding name, or the binding type is WS HTTP binding, and one endpoint for communication. So there is only one endpoint for communication. Okay, is there any question in between? No. Okay, so let me continue. Now, when the user clicks on this place order button, this place order should be basically it should invoke all these three operations of the interface service contract, that is initiate order, place order, and finalize order. And it should create a book order object, and it should send it as part of the place order operation. So let us see the implementation of this button click event handler. So first of all, we create the service class client instance. Basically, it's a proxy object through which we can communicate with the service. So this class is create the channel, establish the connection, and then it will invoke the operation. So basically, invoking operation is nothing but sending a message from client to the service. Okay, and this binding type is this automatically taken from our config file. We can copy that binding name here. So there are three main operations: this client dot initiate order, book order, and sorry, not book order, place order, and third one is finalize order. So first one is initiate order. To get the status of this placing an order, we update the labels text. Second is place order, but before that we need to create this book order object. Okay, so we create a new book order object. Okay, in the one of this variable, we update its property like ISBN number, quantity, first name, last name, and address part by reading it from the text box values. And finally, we pass that object as the parameter to this place order operation. So this will create a SOAP message. Within that SOAP message, it will set the header to be the ISBN number, and body, the rest of the information will go inside the body. The SOAP message will be sent via this client object, and it will be sent to the service, and it will be processed on the service side. The return value, the response will be sent back. We store it into the reply, which is nothing but the book order. Now here we will update this text box value to be the order number, because order number we are not writing. It should be generated on the service side. So this order number, we are getting it from the reply message, which is nothing but of type book order. And we update the text box value. Finally, we invoke this finalize order and again update this label. And once this is over, we can close the connection. Okay, we can close the connection. So here it is usual, like we are using data contract. The only thing is internally how the message is being transmitted. Okay, any doubt so far in this slide? You just let me know. This is very simple, nothing new. Okay, any doubt so far in the client app? Okay. So we can build the client app, and then we are running, we are providing these details, and we keep this order number empty because we expect this order number will be updated on the service side, and whenever we click on the place order, we'll get this order number updated on the client screen. So now if we click on this place order, and then it should get this, it will invoke all these three operations, starting with initiate order, place order, and then finally finalize order. And it will update this status of this order processing. And meanwhile, it has also updated this order number, which is we hard coded this order number to be the string, and this has been updated. So basically, the communication has been taken place. This entire book order was sent from client to the service, and there it is processed. It generated a new order number, updated the book order, and this book order was sent back to the client, and we are getting this information. And we also get this message that order placed successfully. If there is some issue, then it should throw an error like quantities or it is out of stock, or the insufficient or payment failed, or whatever this status message should be updated. Now we will further dig it by using the WCF test client. We want to test it and check the SOAP message. So if we open this, run this app through the WCF test client directly, if you run the service, it will be open in the WCF test client, wherein we provide these details by clicking on this place order operation. We provide the ISBN number, address, first name, last name, and quantity, and then we click on the invoke button. We get this reply. If we click on this XML button, we have the request and reply, request and response. So let us go to the request part. Yeah, this is the request part. Now we'll observe this that here within the header, this ISBN number is present. Whatever we have entered will go inside this header, and the rest of the book order, like address, name, quantity, will be an order number because it will go inside the body part. So we can see that how we can decide. So again, in a special cases, this message contract might be used, and you decide which information you want to send as part of the header or body. And this is the response message. Once again, in the response also, you will get that ISBN number is part of the header. Okay. Yeah. So response is part of the ISBN number is part of the header, response header, and the rest of the information is a part of the body. Okay. This is inside the body. This is that information that we received from the service, and with the updated order number. Okay, here order number is updated. So let's see how we can use this message contract for deciding the SOAP message, which part of our data will go inside the header and which part of our data will go inside body can be determined via the message contract annotation. And now you can try this app on your end. It's a very basic app. You can try this. I have already provided the slide. You can uh, you can right now create this service client and service host and client for this app. If you want to quickly build it, you can, instead of having all these attributes, you can go with only two attributes, say, or two three attributes: the name quantity and the order number. And then you can try to finish this application and verify that it is working on your end. And you can also open this service inside the, and even if you want to test it without host or without writing the client, you can test it inside the WCF test client. So that way you can save time, and before you actually build the client app, you can verify that uh, it is working. Okay, just a minute. Excuse me. Okay, so you can download this slide and you can start from the 25th slide, wherein it begins with the message contract. So right now, for quickly building and testing the application, you build the service and test it using the WCF test client. Okay, and you verify that how this message, SOAP message in the WCF test client. Okay, is it fine? Any question you can ask, because it is very simple feature of this WCF. We have learned data contract. Now we have also learned the message contract, and by quickly building a small app, you will be able to know that how to use this feature. In case if it is required, we can use this message contract. Okay, there is a question. Can client able to message contract is used or data contract is used? Okay, just a minute. Hello. Yeah. Okay. So your question is whether the client is able to know message contract is used or data contract is used. See that the client will get this information, then definitely it needs to know, because see that some of the information will be passed inside the header and some is passed inside the body, right? So if it is not aware about it, it cannot get the data from the header, because we have specified that ISBN number will be part of the header and the rest of this information will be part of body. So the client must know that this is how the service is sending the data. Otherwise, by default, it will, if it assumes that the everything is coming as part of the body, the client will miss this ISBN number. Okay, all of you can try this message contract app, and right now no need to create the host and client app. You can quickly build the service and test it through the WCF test client to check whether it is working properly or not, or whether the data is transferred as part of the header and body as per your definition. And those who have finished this application, simply type in, say, yes or done in the chat box, so that I know that you are able to create this app, your service basically, that uses message contract.